Hello, Blackhawks fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of the Four Feathers podcast. I am GM Ron. I'm joined this evening by Tony Marchese. Tone, we were both in attendance last night for the Jonathan Toews return. We'll get to that here in just a minute. But it's been a little bit, about a week and a half since we've been on the mic, 6 games that we'll get into on this show as well. We've also got a little bit of trade discussion chatter, little hypotheticals that we'll play and have some fun with that. And of course, we got to talk about some of the impending of what's coming up here in the near future with the Olympic break just around the corner on the other side of the calendar turn. But Tone, before we get into anything, my friend, how are you?
Ronald, I'm doing well. It's good to be back on the microphone. I think last time we talked, after we hopped off here and the rains were coming through, I think you might have took a little water in the ship. So I'm glad that that's behind us and we're all cleaned out. It's getting cold though around here. I don't love that fact. I would go back to the other weather if it made me happy, as long as it doesn't give you any more water in the old basement there.
Yeah, it gave me a hell of a Thursday night after that show. Let's just put that. I was supposed to run. We talked about the back-to-back with the Cubs, and
yeah,
Cubs show never happened. And that was because of Mother Nature decided to take a turn and put some water in my basement. So that's totally fair. That was the last time we were on this platform talking, Tone, but it's good to be back with you here a little bit. Nightmare in the comments. Hi, I cried out a little on the inside. Bring back 19 and 88 and send Faulkner to the sun. Happy Tuesday. What's up, everybody? Salute and cheers to you as well. And we appreciate the compliments, Nightmare. We do our best. We do what we can here on the Four Feathers podcast. Tony, let's dive right into it, man.
Sure. Why not? Let's do it.
Yesterday was fucking electric. And I'll tell you what, first off, I don't know if everybody's seen the interview from just a few days ago where they asked Patrick Kane about the return. And he was like, I got 3 or 4 twirls, and I wouldn't be shocked if Johnny gets more. He got 5. So he called it. What an ovation for the captain. And I'll tell you what, man, it's funny. So Jonathan Toews' departure of the Blackhawks coincides with pretty much how long my now wife and I have known each other and have been together. The first sporting event she ever attended with me, Jonathan Toews' last game as the Chicago Blackhawk. So I joked with her. I said, you get to watch me cry over the same grown man twice in the last 3 years. Because, Tone, that is exactly, I think, what everybody was hoping for. I don't know about you. I have a thought on some of the other things that occurred that are really going to be picky and off the wall, but keeping it on the electricity of the moment. Have you ever heard the United Center that loud in your lifetime?
Yes, but you'd have to go back to probably the playing days of Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane. Outside of that, when Marian Hossa had his jersey retired, I feel like it was close, very close on that level to the decibel meter. If we pulled it out there, I think it would be pretty close. I felt that it was louder than the Kane ovation for sure. It felt like it lasted a little bit longer too. And I mean, you'd have to go back out there and time them. I haven't done the research on that, but you could feel the energy from the anthem just throughout the first period and up until the lights dimmed in the stadium during the TV timeout and the tribute video started playing. There was a palpable build to that energy. It was probably the loudest anthem I've heard all season. Even the roar for the Canadian national anthem afterwards, when they showed Jonathan Toews on the screen during that anthem, there was a pretty loud roar. And then, just during the ovation and the sign that unraveled out there over on the other side of the ice, Ron. I don't know if you had a good look at it, just based from your vantage point. But it came down from the 300 level into the 200 level, and it said, welcome back 19. And it was reminiscent of some of the videos that you see of the cheering of the anthem with the banners and everything coming out there. It was a raucous crowd. Goosebumps. I mean, I'm pretty sure every hair on my arm was standing up, and it was really hard not to get choked up during it too. Just seeing the emotion of everybody around you, and then Toews on the ice, just skating around, and you could tell when they would zoom in on him, just he was overwhelmed with emotions about being here. And I've gone back, I've watched it a couple of times in the just the replays, and there was one person who didn't look super happy during all of that, and I believe it was Jamie Faulkner. But other than that, man, it was such an incredible time to be there and just witness all of it. And Ron, I don't know about you. That was one of the cooler moments. I wish he was still on the ice for the Hawks. And we can discuss all of that back and forth. But it was cool to see the city come together and recognize one of the best athletes that's ever come through this town.
Definitely. And you and I talked a little bit about this topic as well, and completely agree here. All crazy, overwhelming, incredible. All words to describe that moment, because you're 100% right. That place was erupting. And I love that you brought up kind of the build of the energy, because that was something that I noticed too. Dare I say, it was almost, that the anthem was insane. But then as play started, both sides were going 100 miles an hour. Nobody was able to score, but it was all out. They felt the energy in the building. And I think the fans were just literally sitting there, and it felt like at every whistle there was this like awkward silence for about a split second to see if the lights were going to dim, because they wanted to know if it was the TV timeout or not. And then it finally happened. It was about 6.5 to 7 minutes, maybe even 8 into the period, that first TV timeout. And like you said, the lights went dark. And Tony, I think as soon as the lights went dark, in my peripheral vision, everybody stood up.
Yep.
Because everybody knew what was happening. And it was awesome, man. Absolutely awesome. I agree with you. I think the pure roar was just unmatched. Maybe I've just lost some of my hearing since the Patrick Kane one, because I remember that one being deafening as well. I think there was also more people in attendance for Kane's because it was the Chelios jersey retirement. So I would argue the attendance now, and that was also, if I remember correctly, a Saturday or a Sunday game. So I think that crowd technically was a little bigger. But to your point, this crowd was ready, and the banner dropping, and it was cool, man. It was really, it was the moment that like genuinely was deserved, right? Like that's just, there's no doubt about that. And then you and I talked about this, because for those that haven't already realized based on our stories, Tony and I have the same season ticket package with the Blackhawks. So we're largely at all the same games. And on top of that, we meet up at the intermissions because our seats are 2 sections apart. We were talking about this at the first period intermission. And I said, I'm so happy that those in attendance that were there were there. And what I mean by that, as we noted, the young guys on the ice, in the other, bench, just watching it from the bench. Hey, Spencer Knight. Hey, Oliver Moore. Hey, Connor Bedard. Hey, all of you young guys. This is what happens when you become a city legend, an absolute city legend, because that's what Jonathan Toews has become. And hey, if you do great things in the city and you win, you are legitimately looked at as an ancient Greek god in this city forever. So those guys got to see it. But then a little special note, at least for my fandom, Tony, Caleb Williams and Pete Crow Armstrong are in attendance as well. Young stars in this city. This was almost important, Tony, I think, for the city as a whole, Because the Bulls and the White Sox have also seen all of that footage. There's almost a little bit of a spark, I think, in the city right now for all these teams to get back to some winning ways that the landscape has unfortunately lacked over the last 5 years or so. That was an important moment for all the young athletes in Chicago to say, you become great, this is what happens. You come back and you will never feel a lack of love from the city of Chicago, no matter what jersey you're wearing, because of the things you did here in this city. To me, that moment is such a storyline that I think needs to be understood a little bit and embraced, because momentum, drive, passion, all those things in life can be generated. Moments can spark that or ebb a wave and flow. You can manipulate the energy through that. That's a momentum changing moment for these young athletes in Chicago right now who are establishing themselves as the next wave of stars. Because, hey, this is what happens when you make it to the top here. And that, to me, that was maybe the best part of the whole thing. Like Nightmare said here, he hopes Caleb understands the gravity, great word, of that moment. Epic, epic moment for Jonathan Toews.
Hands down, I mean, there's not much more to add to that, Ron. It was definitely a moment that I think a lot of people, not only within the Blackhawks organization, are going to feel, that love for an athlete, someone who reached the pinnacle of success, not one time, but multiple times in this city. But to see how they celebrate a champion in the city of Chicago, to see the fruits of that labor, even when you're gone and you come back, to just see how respected you are for being part of a winner. That means a lot. And this is on the heels, Ron. We haven't even talked about this. This is on the heels of Eddie Olczyk getting the microphone in the preceding game up to this to talk about the banner year celebrations. And he got himself a little bit of an ovation. He mentioned a lot of stuff about guys who were part of building those teams too. And I don't know about you, I was shocked that John McDonough got a shout out from Eddie Olczyk and that they gave him a microphone and let him talk about what went into building these championship teams. And I don't think it was a shot towards the current regime as much as some people wanted to make it out to be. But I think it's important. The names that were recognized in the past week in that building did a lot of special stuff to bring us those 3 cups. And capping it off with Jonathan Toews coming back in the next home game and seeing the way that this city showed up on a Monday night in sub-zero freezing temperatures, absolutely incredible. I haven't been to the United Center when it's that crazy and what feels like forever. This was a Monday night. I feel like there's been Saturday night games that operations were running smoother because it was just, I don't know. It felt so much like a playoff game, like trying to get into a White Sox game almost when they were good, and just how chaotic everything was around entering the stadium, parking. We're going to talk about that in a couple minutes. The lines, just the way that shaped up, it was something. It was something to behold, man. I'm happy that we both had the opportunity to get there and share that experience, with each of our both attendees that we brought with to the game. And I know your wife was there. My brother was there. It was just a great moment. I can't remember having that feeling going into a game this season, last season, the hosted game somewhat, the Chelios game somewhat, but last night, man, there was just this, shit. I parked like 4 blocks away. I think you parked farther, and not even in official parking because you couldn't get anywhere. It was gridlocked completely around the United Center hours leading up to the game.
Yeah.
And again, we'll talk a little bit about why that is, but just that feeling, like you're sitting in traffic, you've got, either your pregame tunes on, you got the radio on, they're talking about the build up to this game, and you get in there and the energy was there from the moment you walked into the United Center. It was awesome. It was great. And I hope that we get back to this culture where going to sporting events in this city are that special. Because I could tell you, any young kid who was in attendance last night probably felt like, wow, this is not the regularly attends games. They would notice the difference. This was something special. And then, you also bring out Christopher Stieg and Andrew Shaw to sound the horn off for this game. You know that you've got other former champions still in town from the celebration over the weekend. Just an incredible game, man. I would go back and live that one over and over again. Not to mention they won the game too, which is important.
I was going to say, we haven't even talked about the result of the hockey game yet. And we should pivot there. Let's take a little detour because, as you mentioned, we are going to come back to the parking. That was not intentional, but that was kind of a bar, Tony, I must admit. But let's get to the actual game itself, because I think that's important for context here amongst recent games. And we'll talk about some of those recent games too, but focusing on this one. The gravity of the moment's important, but let's not forget when they played Patrick Kane, he beat them in overtime. There was a little bit of a sour note at the end of it. You know what I mean? Because it was a different time in Blackhawks hockey. They were very much in the rebuild, and it's
didn't like walking out of that one.
No, and I think that was maybe a little good for the rebuilding Blackhawks. They needed to get a little smack on the ass and say, "Hey, you moved on. You guys got to put your money where your mouth is," almost in a way. This rebuild's got to work, and there's pressure, there's expectation. This time, though, that's an important win for a young hockey club. And Tony, I know we're sitting here and this team's not quite where I think a lot of fans want them to be, especially after the hot start that they had earlier this season. But what I will say about it is it's an important win to bounce back. You just got your ass handed to you on the Banners Night celebration with 5 unanswered goals from the Boston Bruins. And you've only had one other win since we last did a show, and that was the Drew Comesso shutout against Nashville. They needed this kind of win, I think, where it was a physical game. Lardis was getting his ass beat by Adam Lowry at points in this game. They were really challenging the young guys. Then you had, plenty of big board battles. Johnny Toews ended up on the ice because he's going hard in the corners and stuff. It was a very physical hockey game. And a very unlikely hero in a very unlikely way, given the flow of the game. Jason Dickinson crushed it with an absolute rocket of a shot into the corner from out wide, which again, not his game, not the guy you'd expect to snipe from out there. And there was a lot going on in the paint in this game. So for that to happen from as far out as it did was kind of ironic, dare I say, given the nature of the game. But that's an important one. You hold on, you settle in, you hunker down a little bit. And Spencer Knight dazzles in the game. I think the defense had a really strong night. They were letting Spencer Knight see everything for the most part. He really didn't have to make a lot of traffic saves. And when he did, he was in perfect positioning. And you gutted out a win against a division opponent to stop a losing streak. I'm very, very pleased with that, Tony, separately. But on the gravity of the night that it is the Jonathan Toews game, that tells me and shows me there's progress still happening, folks. We don't have to get totally discouraged yet with a 2-4 6-game stint here since we last recorded.
I'm a little discouraged by it, but I feel better after this last win.
Well, for sure. So I think that's the type of win where it's like, hey, that's a get right game. We slugged one out. We needed that. And now you got a couple days off before you have quite the southeastern United States gauntlet coming up here with a game in Carolina and then 2 at the UC against the Florida teams. This was a good get-right game, and I think they needed this, Tony, to try and turn some things around here, maybe gain some momentum, get Frank Nazar back, make some noise here in 2026.
I agree. This has been a bit of a tough stretch, though, Ron, and part of the reason is in the title of the show, man, the flu. Right when you get Connor Bedard back and you're starting to, move things, his team gets ravaged by the flu. If you haven't been sick yet this year, you're probably going to get sick soon, is my warning to everybody out there. But it took the Blackhawks a little bit, I think, to get their wheels back going after that sort of ran through the locker room, and you had a bunch of different roster movement and up and down. You're playing one game with Drew Commesso and a I think it was like a 40-year-old goalie that got signed off the street the day of to be your backup goaltender, and half your defensive guys are trying not to puke out there on the ice, and Teuvo Teravainen, I believe, went down during that game too with an injury. So it took a little bit to get the wheels back turning, but that was a really detrimental point in the schedule where you were like, I think it was 2 or 3 points out of a wild card spot, and they've somewhat fallen from there since due to this little recent stretch. But you're right, this is a get right game. The game against Nashville, they should have won, and they did, even with Drew Commesso in there, and early little stick taps to him for handling business down in Nashville last weekend. But this was a game they needed, especially like we talked about, coming off the banner night, go up 2-0 against Boston, get sort of boat raced out of that one with five goals in a row given up. It was ugly. Didn't like seeing that. Then, you come back and you handle business against the team in the Winnipeg Jets that you should beat on a very important turn this around kind of night to keep yourself afloat in this. I know on our last show, you were anti-Tank Ron, and I'm pretty sure you're still anti-Tank Ron at this moment going forward. So we want to get wins. We want to accumulate a couple more points here, make this interesting going into March after the Olympic break, because there's going to be a lot of games in a very short period of time once we start this hockey season back up. So you're going to want to see this team continue to add some points. And I think getting a shutout against the Jets, Spencer Knight looked awesome. You get the Connor Bedard goal that goes far down on an empty netter, which, you watch the replays on that one. He was a little concerned that he almost missed that shot. And I think the important thing here is getting Connor Bedard going again, Ron, after his extended absence, comes back for a game, goes down himself with the flu, and then gets back up and starts playing again. These last couple of games, you haven't seen the same Connor Bedard that you started the season with. That point per game, electrifying play. There's been, just it looks like a little bit of rust there. And obviously, they've kind of shied away from him taking a lot of face-offs and being involved in his natural game. So it's taken a little bit of an adjustment to get Connor Bedard sort of going. But I think once you get Bedard moving in the right direction, I think the empty net goal helped. And then you get a guy in Frank Nazar who looks like he's nearing a return here pretty soon. All of a sudden, those offensive components that you saw in the first half of this season that really helped drive a lot of that play, hopefully puts a smile on anti-Tank Ron's face, because you're going to see a lot more offense. It's going to be easier for them to stay in some of these games and generate a little more offense. One thing that they talked about on the post-game show as we were driving home from the United Center last night, Jeff Blashill sort of talked about this point in the schedule where you start to get these 2-1 games, these 2-0 games, 3-2 games, not as open because teams are sort of battening the hatches down for the playoff stretch. You have to find ways to win those games, and this was a very important one for the Blackhawks, not only with Spencer Knight and net basically pitching the shutout there, but the defense in front of them for shutting a lot of this stuff down. There was plenty of times where there were loose pucks in front of the net. The whistle didn't blow. Defense had to clear it out of there, get it out of there. You didn't really know where the puck was. But the boys were battling in front of the net, and that's what you like to see. And that ultimately leads to 2 points for the Chicago Blackhawks, and that's what you want to see. And I agree with Blashill's assessment. These are going to be grittier, tougher games down the stretch here as we near the playoffs. And I was impressed with what I saw last night.
Definitely. And I think that that's going to bear well for this hockey team. Like, just the way they're kind of built, a lot of two-way forwards, pretty strong defense right now, all things considered, even though Artem Levshnov is one of my favorite players to watch play hockey because he's just everywhere and all over the place. But like this delicate balance between chaotic and structured at times, but always electric. I think those kind of games are going to fit this team, right? They're a little more physical. They're a little more, they forecheck like a mother against the Jets. I think that's an important piece of this too, right? That's where having some of these veterans, I think, is going to come in handy for these young guys. And they're going to learn some good lessons on how to play hockey. Nightmare says here too, they have to gel again. Injuries mix things up. They're going to have to catch that chemistry again. 1000%. Getting Frank Nazar back is massive. This is a one of your top two centers. I think we almost lose hindsight of it already, but they were down their top two centers and like kind of finding a way to hang around.
A lot of that has to be attributed to the way that Oliver Moore has stepped up and played the center position. And you were championing this a lot in some of our conversations. So I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there. It was next man up for some of the young guys. Ryan Green, Oliver Moore, Nick Lardis, literally next man up. And Nick Lardis is, for better or for worse, he's sort of hung. I think that this last game that we saw him get sort of tossed around a little bit was the first time I sort of questioned, like, okay, what does he need to work on? And I think that they'll go back and they'll look at some of that tape. But there were a couple of times he put himself in some quasi-vulnerable positions to get himself sort of knocked around, so to speak. But, it's been a next man up of this, the younger guys that don't have as much star power, as much staying power and household name, recall for a lot of people across the NHL or even within casual Hawks fans that have really helped sort of weather the storm. Obviously, they weren't overpowering. They went through a really tough stretch, got the ship kind of right. Now you're adding pieces back in, as Voodoo has said. Matthew, thank you. They need to gel again. And Ron, I agree with that as well. The fact that once you get Frank Nazar back, it almost feels like, he has been sort of forgotten about. Like I said, this offense will come back, and it's going to be a lot stronger than what you watched this December and early version of January Blackhawks team. Hopefully coming back here real soon. And then as they get a break for the Olympics, hopefully they come back rested and healthy and ready to go.
Absolutely. And I think they have I'm gonna keep riding that train. I think they have a chance to scare the shit out of some people late in the season. I'm not gonna sit here and promise they're gonna make the playoffs, but I think they're gonna make it close. I really do. And that's gonna be important. You rest up. Only one player currently, as we talk about the impending Olympics aspect of this, it's just Teuvo, and Teuvo's been out. So if Teuvo's hurt, he might not even play for the Olympics either. I don't expect him to be out that long. It doesn't sound like it's anything super serious. But only one player going to the Olympics right now, assuming Connor Bedard doesn't get chosen for injury replacement. It could really benefit this team when you get into March and you have an opportunity to make some noise again. So I think that's going to be absolutely critical. Tony, we have to get back to the parking aspect, but I want to ask you first, anything else from this recent stretch of play that really you need to get off your chest?
Not really. I think I've touched on most of the stuff that is on the top of mind. Again, I'll close this little section down by saying hell of a night at the United Center last night. That was absolutely incredible. And it was good to see Jonathan Toews play hockey. Even if that's the last hurrah, I don't expect it to be. But it was good to see him back on the ice and be able to give him that type of reception. Obviously, it was a little bit emotional for a lot of people, but to see him in a different uniform, it was still good to see Jonathan Toews back on the ice after all of his health struggles, everything he went through. Yeah, 19 forever, man.
Yeah, that was cool. It was fun to bust out the Jonathan Toews jersey for the first time and probably I don't even recall if I wore it to his last game as a Hawk.
2-3 years.
It's been a minute. But it's a gem, Tony, because it's got the old Reebok logo still on it. So it's from like the young Jonathan Toews days. That's kind of a fun little tidbit about that. But it was a great night. I completely agree with you. The only thing that maybe wasn't great for some people, Tony, that I think is worth addressing because there's other future plans that the Blackhawks and the United Center have that could also continue to affect this topic. The parking was crazy, man. All the lots were coupon only. All the lots were completely full. I got there at 7:00. Admittedly, I got there late. But everything around the stadium was already mixed up. And you had been there before and you said the same problem. Yeah, we ended up parking, I think, a 15-minute walk away.
It was not good. It was not good, Ron. And maybe I missed something. Maybe there was a notification that went out to everybody. But man, was it different than any other game I've attended so far this season. Normally, there's a couple of lots that you can pay with cash. Now, did they change that because they expected a heavy crowd? I don't know. I was told by our beer vendor that they had changed the way that parking worked a couple of weeks ago. Maybe it was a year change, start of 2026, we're changing this. But you would think, as a season ticket holder, you'd get some sort of notice. And I could have just missed an email. I was on vacation. I was dealing with sickness around my house as well. I know you've had your fair share of stuff going on, Ron. But it was gridlocked around the stadium for quite a while. I got down there, I'd say probably off the highway, 6:45-ish, probably about 15 minutes ahead of you. Normally, you could just pull right into lot F or whichever lot it is you're parking in, CA, whatever. We talked about the prices for the parking being raised prior to the start of the season. All the close lots were like $50, $45, $40 for the farther lots. It was like a $15 increase over last year, like across the board in every single lot, which is kind of nuts. I found a Reddit thread that had talked about this and, in relation to the 1901 project, which by all accounts, I thought should have started by now, at least due to the messaging that they had said that this year they were going to start closing lots down prior to the season. Haven't seen really any movement there. But, man, I don't know what that was yesterday. It was pure chaos. You had cars getting in line in gridlock traffic to try and park in lots that didn't have space available and were coupon only, and people didn't have coupons. I haven't seen anything like it at a Hawks game ever. And now, if that's the case going forward, my PSA to everybody who's going to a Hawks game, get on Spot Hero, find yourself a spot. You can use Spot Hero to find parking in some of the official lots. Pro tip. Now, I've done that before, but most times I'm just rolling up to the game because I don't have a parking prepaid pass with my seats because I don't drive to every single game. And I know you don't either, Ron. And sometimes you're going somewhere beforehand and taking a shuttle from a bar down the block or whatever. But last night was a bit of an issue. And you would think that there would be some sort of communication out there from some of the lot attendants or people directing traffic on where to go. It was a disaster. From 6:45, I don't think I got into the United Center until about 7:31, which is right around like the start of the ceremonies. Hustled up to the seats and got in. But that's terrible. That's terrible.
Yeah. You're 100% correct. I think you nailed it, man. I really do. I think it's it's fair if there's a reason behind it, but like the communication, I think, is the biggest piece, right? Hey, what if you know, what if you're trying to test like what lots are the busiest? Because when they do have to start shutting down parking lots, you're probably gonna have to prioritize where you want to start first to start the project. That's great if that's the reason, but like just let people you got to let people know that. Because I it really did. I actually spoke to at least one person I think that like the whole parking thing I think might have caused them to like miss the game because they couldn't find parking and they didn't know
That's
what to
horrible.
do. So I'm hoping that's not the case. I gotta get the full story on that soon, but um yeah, man, it's something to keep an eye on. But I agree. I usually park far and I do other things beforehand, and as a result, it's a little bit of a different experience as you mentioned. But no, I think a great point, and an early ruffling of some feathers, perhaps from you, Tony, and we certainly wanted to get to that one. I think that one was more important than leaving for the ruffle feathers at the end of the show.
It
Um,
it pissed me off. It's definitely something that I might send a strongly worded email about. I don't know about you, Ron, but that's not acceptable to have complete chaos. I think it's going to get pretty fucking worse once they start shutting down uh, some of these lots for construction projects. I don't know where everybody's going to park. This whole plan
yeah,
has me very worried about the user experience of going to a game.
yeah, 100%. It's gonna be something to keep an eye on for sure. Um, we'll have to wait and see what happens when it's all said and done. Tone, let's keep this train moving here. One more thing before we do get to the rest of our ruffling feathers and stick taps is that of the trade chatter around this team. It's picked up a little bit in this 2 and 4 stretch between shows for us. And, it was starting to look like, yeah, maybe they won't sell anybody. And then it was like, yeah, maybe they'll sell Connor Murphy because he's going to be valuable to a contender. You know, maybe we'll sell Jason Dickinson too. Now it feels like the list of names is getting a little bit bigger as things have gone on, and maybe they feel that some of these guys in Rockford need to get a look or a fair shake, and maybe they get like a 20-game tryout. I wonder, like a Samuel Savoy and some of those guys that are down in Rockford. Maybe that's an effort to get them some looks so they know what they're working with before they go into the upcoming draft. But it depends what the value is what it's sounding like. And Tony, there was a report from, I believe, Frank Saravelli. He believes the Hawks can get a prospect and a second round pick for Jason Dickinson at the deadline. If that's the case, you're going to Dickinson and being like, hey, man, look, if you want to come back to Chicago, like, can we work that out? Or you either have to just say, hey, Jason, thank you for your time in Chicago, but we really have to keep getting younger and keep getting some more assets to get where we need to go. And you're really, really valuable right now. And you're going to have a chance to potentially win a Stanley Cup because I think then Connor Murphy's probably just as valuable, right? Is kind of where I would go in terms of value. That could be beneficial if this Hawks team feels like they have enough prospects to play. And hey, even if it's just a chaotic shit show at the end of the season, that's fine. But it's let everybody get this last run so they can really retinker and retool maybe a little bit in the offseason and improve some depth in areas if they don't believe they have the organizational depth that they're looking for.
I would do it in a heartbeat, Ron. I don't know about you. You're the GM here. So you tell me if that offer actually comes across, how fast are you hitting accept? To me, it's immediate. I thought you'd get maybe a third, fourth rounder, maybe even worse than that. Jason Dickinson is a great player, but in the long term Blackhawks roster fit, I don't think that he really sticks here much past this season. I don't think that there's a reason to really bring him back, which is sad. I've had some great Jason Dickinson moments, with him here, especially part of our ticket plan. We were there for the hat trick. But there's more roster spots for these young guys that need to take that next leap, that need to be opened up. And I think Jason Dickinson is kind of that odd man out when it comes here, as long as some of these guys, don't get traded for something else. But I would generally think if you can get pretty much anything for him, you're probably looking at moving him at this deadline. I think, a second rounder plus prospect would be a hands down immediate accept.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, especially this season, because certain deadlines have more action than others, right? I think if they're going to be able to capitalize on some of that value,
I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of action in this deadline. It's what you're foreshadowing here, Ronald.
no, I think maybe it might be a little bit more active if this is the going rate, or maybe just Tony, I'll tell you what, I think what's going to make it a little quieter, there's a lot of parity in the NHL right now. Nobody's really running away in either side. There's a few teams that are running away. There's so many teams that are still kind of close, and because of this huge gap of action between the end of January and the deadline in March, because of no February hockey effectively, thanks to the Olympics, I think the trade deadline is next week, dare I say. I think we can start seeing moves happening sooner.
The other thing that we need to take into account here, Ron, is the Olympics do take place, and you might see some teams lose a key piece of their roster going balls to the wall for their country. Look what happened last year at the Four Seasons or the Four Nations. These guys don't.
You're a true Chicagoan, Tony.
Yeah, Four Seasons.
Four Seasons.
That's exactly what was in my mind right there. Man, those commercials. These guys don't take this as exhibition. They play their heart out in these international games. And, it's going to be on a little bit of a smaller rink over there, which I'm sure we'll talk about more as the Olympics near. But, man, what if that opens up the possibility for some serious moves? Not just with the Hawks, but across the league to see some shakeup. And, it takes one star going down or a key cog in your, second line for somebody to get real aggressive, potentially for a Jason Dickens. So, does it benefit the Hawks to move him prior to, or do you wait and see who needs what after the dust settles over in Italy?
It's a great point. And I think, Tony, dare I say, maybe this is anti-Tank Ron speaking. Dare I say that maybe the Hawks do compete then for a spot? Like, maybe do they wait too? Are they saying, hey,
yeah,
we know that if there's a lot of injuries, either do we feel like we can really go after it? Maybe teams will just totally punt on this season out of nowhere, and they can, because I don't know if you remember, Tony, at least I recall this. Frank Saravelli reported that there was belief that the Hawks could maybe even think about adding pieces.
Yes, add.
Nothing crazy, but let's go buy on a guy that's an expiring contract, or let's go buy on a guy who needs a change of scenery. One of the names I had in mind, and I've been kicking around the idea for a while now, would a Ken Johnson make sense from Columbus? Player with a lot of success, but has been buried on the fourth line a little bit this year, and he's an expiring deal, but he's young enough where it's a high upside kind of move. Because I think they have.
Are you moving draft capital for 1 year of someone or a half season of someone?
Maybe. You have enough high value picks. They have 3 seconds this year. You have the 2 firsts. If you can move, maybe you're moving a guy in a change of scenery trade like we saw with Nolan Allen. Maybe it's that and a little bit of a higher level version of Nolan Allen, perhaps. and an asset and saying, "Hey, here you go. We'll take the risk in that kind of move." Reminds me a little bit of a Casey Middlestad, Bowen Byram trade. If we're being honest here, that's kind of the value I think you're looking for. Maybe you find a piece that's like, "Ooh, okay, you weren't going to be available if we didn't trade for you. Like, this is a move that could really benefit us." Well, I would love to see them do something like that. So maybe all of a sudden they say, let's go for it because enough teams are going to be affected by this and whatever. Because I think that rink is really scaring some people right now with the Olympics. And maybe if you're the Blackhawks, you're kind of happy that only Tavo is representing his country just because there's a lot of concern around that right now. And I think that could be a fascinating pivot in the season for so many teams if this doesn't go right.
Not that you want Olympic hockey to be bad and see a
God,
ton
no.
of injuries. You want to see these guys out there competing and get your hockey fix at a different rate than what it is during the normal NHL season. But yeah, I there's going to be something that happens, unfortunately, to probably someone who's very important to their NHL club. And yeah, I don't know. And would love to see Bedard represent his country, but I'm not losing any sleep over him getting a couple of weeks of rest, especially coming off of another injury. And I know his name's been floated around as a potential replacement player for Canada. I'd love to see him shine on the international stage, but hell, if that comes at the expense this year of some sort of freak injury, and now all of a sudden you don't have Connor Bedard for the rest of the season, you're going to have a whole city of people screaming, "Why the hell did they let him go?" That's
1,000%.
the nature of the beast, unfortunately. So, there are positives that come with him getting some time off. That's all I'm going to say on that.
Also might be good because I feel like younger players, when you're this young and all your stars and key pieces are really young, there's also a conditioning aspect to it too. You're getting used to the full normal grind of a season at the NHL level. I think that's another benefit to the rest for some of these guys because then you can make a push in March and really get that progress back that you were looking for at the beginning of the season. Because again, Kyle Davidson's kind of said it already. They're not playing to like keep losing. Like they're starting to try to get this thing going in the other direction. If this helps, you're probably thrilled if you're the front office because you have an advantage that a lot of other teams won't have, where pretty much all your key pieces got to rest for 2.5 weeks in the middle of a season.
Now, GM Ron, you're probably more abreast of the situation than I am. Rosters do freeze, correct? And they are not allowed to practice during the Olympic break, if I recall correctly.
I believe that is correct. I don't recall.
Okay.
That's a research project of making sure. But if I recall correctly, there is a deadline in place per se where, yeah, it has to take a break for a little bit. That's why there's some belief that like we might see a couple little trades here soon with teams being
Right.
like, hey, let's get ahead of it. We're going to go get depth here, or we're going to go with depth here, or, we're not that affected by the Olympics, perhaps like the Blackhawks, we're in it. We're going to try to give ourselves a chance. So I believe there is one, but I cannot confirm. So again, might see some movement because of that.
Okay. That's what I was wondering, if there was sort of the holiday roster freeze that took place around Christmas, if we've
Yes,
got one of those coming, but I believe there is. I could be wrong.
I believe you are correct. So that'll be something interesting to see. One last idea, Tony, that I've seen kicked around that we've talked a little bit about already is the idea of extending Ilya Mikheyev. Do you think the recent weeks change how they feel about Mikheyev? Or do you think that's still going to happen and that's a serious talk that maybe they're holding for the Olympic break? Because I believe teams can still like talk with players about contracts and things during the season or during the Olympic break. I believe that's the case because there's some rumored meetings that are going to be happening between like I believe Panarin and the New York front office over the break
So
and some other one.
I did see that they talked to Panarin in New York and said that they were not going to offer him another contract, which is an intriguing name.
Yes.
And I'm sure that that meeting, if it is taking place, is sort of what took place here with Patrick Kane when he went to New York. What are your plans? Do you want to move to a different scene for this and a playoff run? So have you? I did do a little Googling on the Google machine while you were talking there. There is a freeze from February 4th to the 22nd. Um, no trades, no roster moves, so that can impact that. I don't have any word on whether or not people will be practicing and whatnot during that, but I'm sure those guys will still be skating in some capacity, not shutting it down completely. But Ellie McKayev's an interesting scenario. He's a guy I want to see on this team longer term. I don't know about you, Ron, but I love uh, just the speed and what he offers on the penalty kill. His offensive upside's there, but he's also a guy that can play some solid defense from the forward position. He's a guy that will play a good brand of hockey. He's not lazy out there. There are some nights where you see Ilya Mikheyev being one of those guys that's, busting his ass to go dig out pucks and creating opportunities the other way using that speed. And I think he's a great bottom six guy to have on this, as well as somewhat of a veteran that you can throw on this roster alongside guys like Tyler Bertuzzi, who's another one that I'd keep around here for quite a while. I lean towards an extension for Ilya Mikheyev, just personally. Don't know where you see the numbers fitting. You are the salary cap master over here, Ron. So if you think that there's a way to get it done that fits the long term for this team, and that when I say long term, I don't think I'm going above 4 years with Ilya Mikheyev. I think that's sort of the cutoff for me. I'd like to see that land at 3 more years personally. But if he wants longer term than that, I would potentially discuss moving him at the trade deadline. But I don't think the NHL as a whole is going to sign him for more than a 3-year contract personally. So I think that you'll probably be able to get something in the 2 to 3 year range. I'm just going to throw out a ballpark number. I don't know, maybe 4.5, 5.
I could see that. I could see a 3x5. I think the Hawks would give him the 4th year if he would do a little bit less money per year. Kind of almost what they did with Ryan Donato. Hey, fine, we'll give you the extra year, but we're not going to budge on the money. And he's like, yeah, done. That's fine. I could see that happening with Mikheyev too, where the Hawks go, hey, man, would you take 4-5 for 4 years? Are you comfortable with that? Yeah, you like it that much here in Chicago? I could see that happening. But this is a great point from Voodoo. He is an ideal bottom 6 guy on a playoff team if the value's there, right, Tone? If we're hearing the value potentially for Jason Dickinson, perhaps you do get that with Ilya Mikheyev. I think the Hawks could be a lot busier than people expect, and I think the Hawks could do this can really go 2 very different ways. Extend Ilya Mikheyev, maybe make a little bit of a trade to acquire something, or like, hey, anybody on an expiring deal, maybe not named Nick Foligno, is getting sent out. And
I think they're going to listen. I think they're going to listen to a lot. Nick Foligno is an interesting case too. From a leadership perspective, he's definitely probably someone that you would consider untouchable. But I think a conversation does need to be had about his future in Chicago, given the fact that he's the captain. I mean, I know a lot of this stuff that he brings is more or less off the ice, and he's acted as a mentor to a lot of these young guys. But I don't think and Voodoo just said it in the comments, I don't think there's a lot of value there any trade value for him. But what's the long-term run plan with him? Does he leave in free agency? Is he planning on retiring? Are you winding the season down? You haven't heard a lot of that. Some of the stuff about, the veterans last season, I look back to like Pat Maroon. You kind of started to know this a little bit after the Winter Classic that like Maroon was going to be going, and it was sort of the final tour for Pat Maroon. You haven't seen that with Nick Foligno, which tells me, at least just right now, and obviously things can change between now and April, that he's probably going to try and give it another go. I know it was talked about earlier this year that I think this was a national broadcast that they had mentioned, maybe he goes to Minnesota and tries to play a season with his brother. Could he go back to one of the teams that he had played with previously? You don't know, but I think, our guy Matthew said another thing. I think he's going to be a AAA coach soon. I think he's got the mentality to be a great coach. I wouldn't be surprised, Ron, if you saw him in the Blackhawks organization doing some coaching of some sorts in the very near future.
Yeah.
That wouldn't surprise me, but they're going to have some sort of conversation about, what the future is. And that's going to open up a vacancy on the Blackhawks leadership team. And I would not be surprised if we're talking about, whether or not Connor Bedard deserves the C on his chest as soon as next season coming up here sometime in April. So, that's an interesting one, that situation to monitor.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. I'm very much looking forward to just all of this now, because that is a great point from Voodoo. Maybe that's what they talk about, right? Maybe that's the path. Hey, don't trade me. I'm just going to play this year out in Chicago. I'm going to go play 1 year with my brother in Minnesota, and I'm going to retire. And when I do, I'm sure the Hawks are like, hey, when you do, you want a front office job, you want to coach in the minors, you want to be a development coach like Kunitz and Campbell and some of those guys are. What do you want to do? And we'll give you a job. We'll give you an opportunity to go ahead and do that. Keep you around because you are a good veteran, or in this case, you're just a good leader that we appreciate in our organization. We'd love to have you in here. I could very much see that happening, and now I'm kind of hoping that happens. I think that'd be kind of cool for Nick Foligno, but otherwise,
I know there was an injury here. We're talking 38 years old. He's going to be 39 basically at the start of next season. Just look at his stats year over year, and there just doesn't seem to be a lot of production this year. Ron, I know, what is it? 8 assists, 2 goals so far. He put in 15 last year. There's a lot left to be desired. His ice time is creeping lower and lower.
Mm-hmm.
It's at 13:42 average time on ice. That was almost just a tad shy of 16 minutes last year. So you're losing about 3 minutes a game there from him. Now, some of that is younger guys stepping up, but man, you're just really looking at this. Only has 24 shots on net so far this season in 27 games. He did miss a significant chunk of time, so we got to take that into account. And we talked about it. It was a hand injury. It's going to be difficult to control that. You've got the not the empty net, the shootout goal, which is basically the highlight of his season so far.
Mm-hmm.
There hasn't been a lot of positive Nick Foligno moments this season.
There have not. So that begs me to ask the next question. And Voodoo says, let's stop beating around the bush and just be honest. He's old and bad. Do you ask him, hey, do you want us to trade you to Minnesota for like a bag of pucks so you could go play out the rest of the year with your brother? Because Minnesota's going to go.
I think it's really hard to sell. I don't know. It feels to me it's hard to sell that on, you're just going to go trade your captain at the deadline like that. Then that starts to beg the question, was it right to give him the C?
Yeah,
was it a right move to give him the captaincy when you didn't have to make anyone captain? Did they get here? I'll just ask another question. We'll dig up dead bodies. Did they give Nick Foligno the captaincy to shut Seth Jones up because he wanted it so bad?
I don't know. All fair questions. All completely fair questions, Tony. I'll hit you with another question though. What if Nick Foligno wants to go to Minnesota? Do you just call Minnesota and go, hey man, give us a seventh round pick or like a prospect that you weren't going to re-sign for Nick Foligno and let him, because he just wants to play at your guys' run with his brother, and if you dress him, cool, and if you don't, that's okay. Like,
I right now at this moment, I think the only reason he's really dressing in all of these games is because he wears a C.
maybe, probably.
Can you get more out of Sam Lafferty if Nick Foligno isn't in the lineup?
Is that another reason to ask Foligno if he wants to get moved? And like, hey,
I think we go back. I think we go back to like this is going to have to take a little bit of massaging, and some of the stuff that you talked about. He's going to have to go to a place that's going to want him, and probably for a whole lot of nothing. So yeah, I mean, you hypothetically could say, "Hey, Nick, do you want to move?" Now, is that a slap in the face to your captain? Does he take that as a slap in the face? Maybe he doesn't want to go. Maybe he enjoys this. He stated a couple of times publicly, he likes being here. The production's sort of a problem, and not a lot of people are talking about it. Granted, some injuries and stuff, but if I had to say, who's probably the odd man out on this lineup, I feel like the team played a little better when he wasn't on the ice. That sucks to say, but as Voodoo points out, these things don't lie. And look at the production; it's really not there.
Yeah. Another storyline to keep an eye on as we get to the trade deadline. Tony, a quick standings update as always. Blackhawks, this was before any games today. 6 points out of a playoff spot. 10 points out of the basement, though. Vancouver is handling that just nicely and making sure that they're going to have the best odds for the first overall pick this year. Kind of feels where maybe we expected, maybe still a little better than we expected. Like, hey, they're not totally out of it yet. They're not totally giving up just yet, unless they wave the white flag at the deadline. But for now, you're like, man, there's still a chance. It's exciting.
Hanging in there. Riding the wave.
Yeah. Absolutely. Riding the wave. Electric comment. My captain did 5 laps yesterday. He's just a guy. Who knows? Who knows?
We'll hit him with the facts only.
Hit him with the facts only. Here, Tone. What do you say? Let's get back into this one a little bit more.
It's time to ruffle some feathers.
Tony, do you have any feathers to continue ruffling with the parking, or another topic? Are you feeling angry because it's cold outside?
I'm pretty angry at the cold. It's only going to get colder. Don't really have many feathers to ruffle. I feel like I ruffled enough with the parking situation, and just got into the Nick Foligno stuff, because that really could have fit, and it was not part of her rundown. But that could have been my ruffles and feathers, was that Nick Foligno discussion. But no, I'm okay, Ron. I see you've got a note here, some secret coding and some secret messaging.
I do
in our rundown, so I'm gonna let you have the floor.
I have a take about the upcoming trade deadline, potentially. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that if a deal comes around that makes sense, Kevin Korchinski's a piece of it. He's been really good in Rockford. He was named an AHL All-Star again. I think you have a decision to make potentially this year with him. Not guaranteeing he's going to be moved, but I think there's definitely a high likelihood that it could happen, because maybe they want to see, if they're going to see what they need to see, you got to move Matt Grzelcyk at the deadline, as well as Connor Murphy, to free up some defenseman spots for him. Otherwise, if you can get value somewhere else, do you move them? I don't know. But that's how I
Yes.
wanted to ruffle some feathers, Tony, is because I think there's a lot of people that are very much still on the Kevin Korchinski train and others that are like, yeah, it's all right. Just if it works, it works, as Voodoo says here. If the value's good, it's good.
I would send him packing just to see NWI Steve get mad. No other reason. No, I think that his stint up here exposed a lot of different things. Now, I was in camp, keep Kevin Korchinski in the NHL after his first season. And part of my reasoning for that was I felt like it was a demotivator to send him down to the AHL and make him sort of work through a lot of these things. I know that you and other talking voices on this show said, no, he needs some extra seasoning and we need to go, get him right before he's ready to take on a larger role. I don't think that's worked. I really don't. He looks good in the AHL every time he comes up and even covers for, a short period of time. We see a lot of holes in Kevin Korchinski's game. I think it's probably at this point in time one of those scenarios where he probably needs a change of scenery. He's been lapped in the depth chart by so many names of kids who have come in here and far exceeded his play. You look down in the AHL right now, and you got another name in Sam Renzel, who came out really hot last year, had his struggles this year, is back down, and I'm curious to see when Grzelcyk eventually moves at the deadline, if that's Renzel or if it's Korchinski. Every single time, you've already moved Nolan Allen out of the way. Artie Levshinov has come in after Kevin Korchinski lapped him on the depth chart. So there's got to be a sense of building frustration, at least, I would think, from the Korchinski camp of, when is my opportunity? This wasn't just a single year thing. This has now been a multiple years after you've been in the NHL that you're still in an AHL thing. And I know, every time we watch in every shift or any sort of Blackhawks marketing, they've really sucked it dry on like Kevin Korchinski. Like, how are you enjoying your stay down in Rockford? And are you getting ready? And then he comes up and it's just like, all you see online is just like, wow, this guy fucking sucks. Yeah. I can't believe he's so horrible. Like, that's got to be so demotivated. I think it's better for all parties involved to just move on from that guy. I know it's going to piss off my guy, NWI Steve, because he's got a ski at the end of his name and he wants a ski on the team. Yes, Matt, it's a good reason. Sorry, NWI Steve. I think it's time for Kevin Korchinski to move on as well. You are ruffling some feathers, but this might have been a targeted one.
No targeting. Just, I think, a question and conversation that needed to be had. Was really how I would put it. Tone.
What do you expect his value to be?
Oh, I have no idea. That I admit.
It's a tough question.
I think so. I'm going to give you a stance. It's not necessarily what I think is going to happen. Or I'm not going to give you a specific team or a specific value, but this is the situation in my head. Because he hasn't really done anything high level in the NHL, and it's a lot of AHL success, you're banking on a GM that was also really high on Kevin Korchinski in that draft. Because those GMs hang on to guys years later. We saw Stan Bowman, remember, coming back to the well, I believe in the 2013 draft class.
There's still a couple guys even in the Kyle Davidson era that I think the Hawks would target just because they were high on those guys in the draft. I don't think that's just a Stan Bowman problem. I think you're right here. It's got to be someone who wanted Kevin Korchinski in that draft.
Absolutely. So I think as long as that happens, maybe you can get good value because they're willing to part ways, or they have a plethora of assets at a certain position and a guy maybe that's just not working out. You take a change of scenery type trade. I love a good change of scenery type trade. Tone, it gets GM Ron excited. I was thinking about Nick Schmaltz the other day, for example.
Jeez. That's
As a change of
smoking
scenery.
Nick Schmaltz.
That is a change of scenery trade because he has been excellent in the Arizona/Utah organization, and he's about to have a career year.
There's been a couple of guys that were former Hawks that have gone on to do some really good stuff. There's a couple of them that blew up in the faces of the other team, but Nick Schmaltz, he's one that really adapted to that change of scenery. Kevin Korchinski is only 21 years old.
He is really young. He is really young. So again, I think another reason, again, if we're going the complete positive direction, in my opinion, hey, Hawks move Matt Grizzly. Kevin Korchinski, you're in the NHL the rest of the season, man. Here we go. You're 21, but like, we know you can do it. Earn it. I think there's an opportunity where the Hawks kind of give him that ability of saying, hey, just play. It's like, don't come up and try to be too fine. Just go be you and figure it out. And sometimes that's what these guys just need. They need a free leash opportunity to just show what they can do. I think Artem Levshinov's gotten a lot of long leash with some of his
Here's an interesting
young
one,
mistakes.
Ron. Him and Sam Rinzel were born 4 days apart.
That's insane.
And I think people forget that just based on their paths and how they got to where they are.
Oh, for sure.
Are they trying to, pick between the two of them here? I think Kevin Korchinski's had the longer leash.
Maybe.
I guess my question is we talk about throwing Kevin Korchinski into the trade pile. What if a team's not high on Kevin Korchinski? What if they want Sam Rinzel?
That's an interesting question.
Are you willing to part with Sam Rinzel at this moment? Because I think, just looking at myself as a Hawks fan, before I went and looked at this information, yes, it was easy to just be like, okay, let's get rid of Kevin Korchinski. But Sam Rinzel has also displayed some struggles at the NHL level, particularly this year. Obviously, last year was high upside. But what if that comes down to like the sticking point? I really think you have to look internally and say, what's the developmental issue here with Kevin Korchinski? Because I would argue that at 4 days apart and at the same age with different paths, both of them have sort of the same runway at this very moment.
Yeah. Could be. Wouldn't it be fascinating though to see those two down the stretch because Murphy and Grizzly get traded?
Bring them up, put them on the same line.
The Alex Vlasic veteran-led blue line.
Alex Vlasic and Louis Crevier.
Yeah. So
Big Lou.
Voodoo says Rinzel's a no for him. But who knows? We are certainly not sure. Tony, let's keep this thing moving, shall we?
Time to give out some stick taps.
Tony, I will let you have the floor first. Who are you giving your stick taps to?
I'm going to give my stick tap to a goalie. Surprise, surprise. It's going to be Spencer Knight. What a night in net last night, Ron. I think that this performance gets a little overshadowed by some of the other goings on in the United Center last night. Very easy to be overshadowed by the return of Jonathan Toews, a Blackhawks win. You had a quarterback in the house as well as an outfielder who are both beloved by the city in their own rights, sort of stirring up the crowd. But while everybody was paying attention to the rock, paper, scissors match between the 100 and 300 level during the game yesterday, which, by the way, that was something. Spencer Knight was down there doing work and gets his third shutout of the season. between the pipes. And man, we looked at a little bit of this before we started. I am unfortunately not on that web page anymore, but I think this was probably his most impressive, if not second most impressive start in the net for the Hawks this season. Just incredible. 3 shutouts. He battled in this one, and it was pretty much a down December for him. I think I had all the save percentages out there. It was his only month this season where he was sub 900 save percentage in December. He's really rebounded back strong in January and back to where we saw him earlier this season. I think that bodes well for the Blackhawks when you've got Spencer Knight just feeling it and playing some really good goaltending. And I really enjoyed the fact that he was able to earn his 3rd shutout of the night last night. And that's where my stick taps are going. Hell of a performance. You want to keep that rolling and let's, get back to the point where we were talking about him as one of the top goaltenders in the league. I think that died down a little bit with that December performance there. And obviously there were some injuries and other things that took place on the ice that were out of his control during that December stretch. But for better or for worse, if we've got Spencer Knight stealing games for us and putting up shutouts, I think this team's going to be just fine down the stretch with him in goal taking a lion's share of the start. So stick tap Spencer Knight, and let's continue to play hockey like that. Ronald, tossing it back to you.
Absolutely. I think Spencer Knight is the Blackhawks X factor. If this team's going to make the playoffs, that's the number one guy that can make it happen, in my opinion, down the stretch. So he's going to be super duper important. Tony, I'm going to a quick honorable mention stick tap because I can't let this go unnoticed. But Drew Commesso with the shutout in Nashville was awesome. And that just shows how deep they are right now at goaltender. Remember the last time that the Hawks won the Stanley Cup? They were deep. Scott Darling was your 3rd goalie and played significant minutes because guys got banged up or performance or what have you. That's such an important position to be deep at. So absolutely a
I'd like to see
honorable mention there for Commesso.
I'd like to see that. We've got a user stick tap or a commenter stick tap coming in here, and I have to comment on it. And I want to see if our guy takes it away after I comment on this. But I'd like to see Drew Commesso over Arvid Soderblom next year. That's my take on that one. Nightmare says stick taps to Dustin Byfuglien for being an absolute unit. He fights polar bears for fun. Big Buff was in the house this weekend.
He sure was.
He definitely looks like he fights polar bears for fun. I have, maybe this should have been my ruffle some feathers. There was an interesting shot into the Blackhawks suite on Centennial Night. I noticed something that I didn't like, Ron. Didn't like it one bit.
What's
and this
that?
might not bother you, but Dustin Byfuglien was rocking a Minnesota Twins hat in the Blackhawks suite. And I received multiple text messages about this. What a disgrace of a hat to wear into the Blackhawks suite that night. Matthew, if you want to stick tap Big Buff still, please let me know. But I just felt like the Minnesota Twins hat was egregious, and we can't have that type of thing going on here. Very disrespectful. Didn't like it.
Tony, you were 100% correct in your prediction. It does not bother me because I do not root for the same baseball team that you do.
Well, that would be like, I don't know, one of these guys coming in here and wearing a, St. Louis Cardinals hat.
Yeah, I guess. I get it, but it's funny. He's from Minnesota.
Yeah, but just, respect where you're at.
Hey, I had to hear over the weekend that Michael Bush is because he's from Minnesota, he's a Vikings fan.
That doesn't bother me.
I know that doesn't bother you, but that bothers me. See, Tony, this is the back and forth that we have here.
I'm sure it doesn't bother you.
Quickly to get back to my original stick tap pick, Big Louis Crevier. You mentioned him a little bit earlier. I think he's played some really good hockey. He was a 7th round pick. He developed, and he's really found a comfortable pairing with Alex Vlasic. And he's a free agent after this season. Tony, would the Hawks try to get ahead of it and extend Louis Crevier before the end of the season? Maybe a little 3-year bridge deal or something at 3.85 mil? Do they try to lock him up for a little bit to be Vlasic's D partner, especially if they're waiting on Korchinski and Renzel? So he's a guy that I think he's played himself into some really legitimate conversation here. Like, you might have to really pay this guy because I think he's worth keeping around. So good for Big Lou, man. I'm loving me some Big Lou. I was thinking about a Big Lou jersey the other day, in fact, Tony.
We might have to hit up our guys over at Obvious Shirts and get a Big Lou shirt.
We do need a Big Lou shirt.
We need a Big Lou shirt. Big Lou's just like you. He hates the Blues too.
Just Dr. Seuss level Big Lou shirts.
Yeah, Big Lou.
I like it.
While we're here, Ron, tell everybody how they can help support the show over with our partners at Obvious Shirts.
Yeah, man. ObviousShirts.com. When you purchase any goodies, use code ONTAPSports and get yourself a percentage off.
It is 10%. 10% off, I believe.
10% off. So go ahead. That helps us. That helps you because you get incredible t-shirts from our friends over at Obvious Shirts.
We did this on the fly, Matthew.
It was on the fly. That's a pretty good on the fly one as well. But big shout out to Obvious Shirts. Yes, some Big Lou shirts might be needed here to celebrate a potential contract extension for the big guy. So big stick taps to Big Lou. Tony, what's on tap next? We mentioned that the Blackhawks are off until Thursday of this week. They will venture down to Carolina. That is a 6:00 start. And it's ESPN Plus Hulu only. So be sure to be on the lookout for the how to watch when we're trying to remember how to watch this game on Thursday. But then Friday, they're right back in Chicago, Tampa Bay. This is an ESPN game, Tony. They are on the big national stage with this one. That will also be a 6:00 start, even though it's in Chicago, because it's a part of a doubleheader on ESPN on Friday Night Hockey. And then on Sunday, the Hawks stay home. It's the Florida Panthers coming to town. That's one of those great 6:00 starts on a Sunday. We love those. Only on Sundays, Tony. That's a CHSN game. But for our out-of-market friends and familiars, it's NHL Network. So ESPN Plus will likely be blacked out because that's just kind of how those TV contracts work. So kind of a gauntlet, Tone, a southeastern gauntlet coming up here for the Blackhawks. And we'll have to keep an eye on that. Also, I don't know if you object, but I will offer this up as an objection opportunity for you. Saturday's game against Boston, up 2-0, and to give up 5 unanswered goes on the games they'll want back tracker. Do you agree or disagree?
I wholeheartedly agree. You're in control of the game. Normally, these are reserved for games you lose by 1. This one's an exception. I really think that was a game they had in hand and it just got away from them. And I think the final score really doesn't pose a threat to the integrity of the games that they'll want back tracker. So I'm going to agree. This one goes on the games they'll want back tracker. They could have lost by 1 goal here. Yeah, this is what I want. I want that one back. Yeah. You're in control of this game.
This
feels, got out of hand.
This feels a little bit like that Toronto game, and that's why I felt like it was okay to put on here.
Yeah.
It gives me similar vibes, and it's against the
Toronto one still stings too.
Yeah, that one sucks. That one is absolutely brutal when it's all said and done. Tone, final thoughts before we sign this thing off.
I've said this a couple of times. It's an incredible night at the United Center last night, and I firmly believe that winning hockey games in special moments in front of packed crowds is part of the reason for that, and why I'm going to put this one in terms of Hawks home games that I've attended in the last few years up on a higher pedestal than things like Chelios night and Patrick Kane's return, because when you have that kind of a crowd and you've got, specific people in the house, Jonathan Toews return, you highlighted the importance for Caleb Williams and Pete Crow Armstrong being there. I heard Christopher Moltisanti from The Sopranos was sitting with the Wirtzes. You had just an enormous amount of, Chicago star power in the building, and the energy of that crowd. The fact that it was on a freezing cold Monday night, like we think back to some of these games, baseball season, we make jokes like, oh, why was Wrigley Field empty? Why is, Guaranteed Rate Field empty? Oh, it was a cold Monday night. People fucking showed up to this one. They fucking showed up, and it was an excellent night, an excellent crowd, and the Blackhawks won the game. That's the most important thing that happened that night, was that they walked out of that building with a win. And all the fans went home happy. It wasn't just one of those, well, it was really cool to, salute Jonathan Toews. Because 9 times out of 10, that feels like, any major Chicago sporting event that we've been to, whether it's, a Cubs, ceremony, or a Sox, World Series ceremony, or all these. When the team wins at the end of it, it makes it that much more memorable. So I felt like that was one of the better Hawks games I've attended. That's my final thought. Winning matters. Anti-tank Ron, take it home.
I love it. I love it, Tony. I have nothing else to add other than just reminding everybody, like, subscribe, hit the bell button over on OnTap Sports on YouTube. Follow along with all of our great shows, including this one, Four Feathers Pod, on the socials. We appreciate the love and support. And of course, if you listen to us in audio only form, give us some love. Give us a review. Let us know how we're doing. And a 5 stars is always appreciated. Tony, as always, what do you say? Let's go
Hawks.